this issue of Crushing Capitalism, we discuss growing inequality and the currency wars of 2011-2012. Inequality is rising dramatically yet again. For example, the U.S. Bureau of the Census has estimated that 1 out of 2 Americans either live in or near poverty. And this, of course, is a result of the lack of jobs, and where there are jobs, the very low wages. The problem with this is that modern industrialized nations, such as the United States, depend primarily for their economic activity on consumption, which means people have to buy things. But when people have no money, then the economy stalls, which is what we're seeing now. This is what people in the social sciences call inadequate aggregate demand, which is a result of inadequate purchasing power. Of course, one would imagine that the proper public policy would be to redistribute income, or at least to create jobs with good incomes, rather than your average Walmart subsistence wage. Unfortunately, the major economies are not opting for the real solutions because their elites would have to lose out from their wealth, as if they don't have enough. Instead, these major nations, including the Europeans, the Chinese, and of course the United States, are engaging in the exact same tactics that other nations did prior to World War I and World War II. Specifically, they are trying to export their way out of the economic depression by lowering the value of their currencies so that their own products are cheap to the other nations that would have the stronger currency, therefore increased exports. This, in fact, is what the United States has been doing through the Federal Reserve and its quantitative easing policies of recent times. Specifically, the Federal Reserve, whether you want to call it this or that, is printing money. And when you print money, you get lower value for that money, and, which is the mirror image of this, greater inflation. Ironically, the United States is also criticizing China for manipulating its currency in order to keep its exports at artificially elevated levels. But what people are not saying is that the Europeans are doing the exact same thing. In Germany's case, the reason why it's doing so well with its exports is thanks to that euro. Had Germany depended on its own national currency, as in the past, its strong economy would have resulted in a strong currency, which would have resulted in turn in fewer exports. But when you're averaging strong economies together with weak economies in the same currency, in this case the euro, you have an artificial advantage if you are a stronger economy like Germany. Now that euro is much weaker than your own national currency would have been, explaining the massive export growth for the German economy. However, currency manipulation in of itself to increase exports is doomed to fail when all major economies are engaging in the exact same policy, leading us down the road to the next dangerous step, which are trade wars. We are in fact witnessing the start of some serious trade wars between the United States and China, which have the potential to spill over to other industrialized nations. But when currency and trade wars fail to lead toward prosperity, the next logical step of the elites is to engage in world wars. We are in fact seeing the beginnings of such hostilities between the emerging and declining hegemons, namely China and the United States. We are seeing challenges between the two in the South China Sea. We're seeing challenges with China trying to extend its reach with airplane carriers, and so forth. And, unfortunately, what people do not like to discuss in polite company is that the majority of people are in fact seen as surplus population by their overlords, whether you call them the Chinese government or the United States government or any European government. And we know what happens in world wars. Lots of people die, usually those who are not the powerful. And when all those people die, now we have a resetting anew of the capitalist business cycle for the long-term prosperity of those who have survived. What we really should be trying to do instead is capture our own governments rather than allow them to lead us down the path of yet another major war. Do what Thomas Jefferson suggested we should do, which is revolt against governments that do not represent us. When 1% or 10% of the population own, in essence, the entire country, then you can call the government that corresponds to that economic situation anything you want. But at the end of the day, it is absolutely not a democracy, at least not a democracy in a substantive sense. Take over the government, stop pretending that you're doing something with an Occupy this or that movement that results in nothing, and take over the running of our affairs. Take back the wealth that has been taken away from us and avoid bloodshed of epic proportions. In solidarity, Dr. Asimakopoulos.